Okay, thanks for those of you who are still on. Thanks for staying with us. I needed to get a quick break, as you can imagine. I can last about 50 minutes. Back, I used to be an instructor many years ago, and we were on that 50-10 rule, and my brain and body still thinks we're on that. So I can do something for about 50 minutes, and then I need a break. So, okay. Hey, again, if you're just logging on, thanks for being a part of this. Really, the focus is for me to hear from you, our airmen and their families. I know we had some spouses logging in and sent up some questions, so thanks for all of our family members that are participating today, because ultimately you serve right along with us. You are airmen too, so thanks for that. I know we had some of our Airmen and Family Readiness Center folks logging in. That's huge. I appreciate that, so thanks for that. And really, just to all of you, thanks for what you do every day. It is an absolute honor to be your Air National Guard Command Chief, and I cannot tell you how blown away I am every day of what you're able to accomplish. What we have been able to do with our brothers and sisters in Texas and in Florida and Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands is just a testament to your dedication. I mean, we have folks that are lined up and volunteering to still go down there because our brothers and sisters are in need. So that means an awful lot to me personally and professionally. So thanks for that. Okay, so let's get at it. But before we do that, I want to do a quick shout out. Hey, I saw on earlier Heather Anderson logged in, and I probably didn't quite answer her question. So Heather, if you're still watching, shout out to you. Thanks for what you do. So Heather used to be here, and she's now working for the Chief of the National Guard Bureau, which is pretty cool. So she's doing cool stuff down there. So the next time I'm in the General Engel's office, I'll come look you up, and then we can talk about your question. She used to be an ALS instructor here, so she was doing great work, and she continues to do great work for our big boss, our 4-star, who's part of the Joint Chiefs, which is pretty cool. So, I mean, what a unique experience. I had the opportunity to do that earlier in my career, and I got to tell you, it's absolutely life-changing. And those kinds of opportunities of development outside of our career fields, outside of what we do every day, sometimes can be the true difference. I will tell you that those opportunities are why I'm here, why I'm in this job, and why I'm borrowing these stripes for a little while, is because of opportunities like what Heather's doing right now to see the world differently. So Heather, thanks for your question, and we will definitely reconnect. Hey, I'm going to do a shout out to Senior Master Sergeant Kits Miller, commonly known as Kits or the Shirt. She was my first sergeant at the wing at the 113th, and then we rejoined when I was down at 1st Air Force as a command chief down there. So I know she just got back from a deployment. It was good to see you a couple weeks ago. Thanks for what you do as a first sergeant, and thanks for what you're going to continue to do for Tennessee and back at your home state. So if you're still listening, thanks for what you do every day. I look forward to reconnecting with you soon and chatting. So. And then I know Murph's on the line. So Murph's typically my travel exec. He's not with me on this trip. Murph, if you're still out there, shout out to you and your family, and thanks for what you do every day. And I hope you're getting a good weekend, because we're going to be in Delaware tomorrow night. Yeah, I think we're going to be in Delaware tomorrow night, and so Murph and I are going to go do that, and then off to the ACC conference for a week. We're going to go down to Langley and spend some time with the commander of ACC, General Rice, and I are, and Murph's going to be with me when we do that. So Murph, thanks for what you do every day. Thanks for the great work you've done for the last year with us, and I appreciate it. So a special shout out. So, okay, let's see. Michael Foster's got a question. We already talked about, one of Mike's questions was the enlisted getting a waiver for a bachelor's degree, and we talked about that. And the idea is that there's a waiver already right now. The idea for promotion is a associate's degree or equivalent, and there's a waiver process for all that. If you have a bachelor's degree, the same thing applies. But here's what I would tell you as a caveat to that. What I find is I hear the narrative out there that all of our airmen, or many of our airmen, have degrees already. If it's not in your record, if you haven't submitted your transcripts to your base education and training, you need to do that, because it doesn't exist according to the Air Force if it's not in your record. So when I pull the data on all of our airmen, I get my data from the MIL-PDS parts, and that is where your stuff's at. So it's great that you have a PhD, but if it's not in your records, it doesn't exist to the Air Force. And the narrative, the personal narrative is interesting, but you need to do that. You need to get it in there, and that will also help when we start talking about promotions, because my narrative or my discussion point with our leadership, particularly on the active component, is our airmen already have degrees, but that only works if they're actually in the record. So help me with that. Those of you who are online right now, I don't care whether you have one class towards your CCIF or your associates, or you have a PhD. I need you to take your transcripts. And I know it's a pain in the behind, but I would ask that you do it because it helps us demonstrate the value of education. It really demonstrates the fact that we are an educated enlisted force in our Air National Guard, and it demonstrates what we bring to the table, that third dimension about what it means to be an Air National Guard Airman. That's different than the active. It's not better or worse, it's just different. We bring a different dynamic. We bring things that our active components don't have. That's our civilian positions, that balance really in the three-legged stool between your military job, your civilian job, and still finding ways to balance with your family. So thanks for that. Okay, I think there was another question in there earlier. Yeah, it was about officers requiring to have a CCAF, and I think I answered that for Mike as well. The idea is our officers come in with bachelor's degrees at the very least. They have to have that, so there's no need for them to get a CCAF. It's redundant. Now, it may not be in their AFSC, but being an officer is really a universal tool, so to speak. It's a different conversation, so there's no intent and there's no discussion there. So, okay. Hey, Chief Gould. Ed Gould asked a question, and we talked a little bit about him. Again, he used to be the state command chief out in Connecticut. Side note, he was also a state trooper for almost 30 years, so Ed Gould was a true drill status guardsman, really found the balance in life and continue to leads right now as part of our Office of Complex Investigations, really helping our leadership make some decisions and do some digging into when airmen have concerns and problems. Chief Gould and his team are those folks that give leadership an understanding of what really happened at the tactical level before we make any real decisions. So Ed, if you're online still, man, thanks for what you do every day. Thanks for your continued leadership, and I appreciate your friendship as well. So Ed, Chief Gould asked, how about a few words on what airmen can do to improve the Air National Guard or help you or other leaders? Hey, Ed, great question, man. And right before break, I talked about EFAC and about your enlisted voice. The fact of the matter is that I need you to communicate with your leadership. I need you to be a part of the leadership decision-making cycle. And a big way to do that, and something I firmly believe in, is participating in your professional organizations or your organizational structure at the wing level. If you're a senior airman, get involved in what in the DC Guard we call the Rising Six. It could be the Focus 5 or the Focus 4 or 5. I mean, it has all different kinds of names, but it's an airman. It's airmen discussing leadership challenges and things that they believe can make the organization better. Be a part of that. And I will tell you, as a wing command chief in the DC Guard, my talking point to those folks were, if we really look at an organizational structure, the vast majority of our airmen are staff sergeant and tech sergeant and below. The vast majority. You are a mafia. If you want to get something changed and you put your minds together, you get together in those organizations and you make a decision about what tomorrow should look like for us, all of us, the wing command chief has no decision there. They have to listen to you. That's how it works. My job as the wing command chief in the DC Guard at the 113th was to spend time with those folks. And I really had conversations about how to bring issues up, how to professionalize the conversation, and then bring them up to the wing commander. That's where I think it starts, right there. That's how we can make it better. That's how you can take personal responsibility for the culture in your organization, is by being a part of the discussion and being a part of the leadership. So, good question. Thanks, Chief. I appreciate that. Will the DSGs ever be able to collect their guard retirement immediately upon retirement instead of waiting to age 60? Under the current construct, no. I wouldn't say never, but I will tell you that we're already walking that back a little bit. You know, getting Congress to allow us to get credit for deployments and begin to take time off was a huge hurdle. Whether we like it or not, sometimes the discussion is about money. To allow all the guardsmen who retire, say at 20 years, to begin collecting their retirement check is a huge thing. And then I would ask you, the next question is, what differentiates us from the active component when it comes to retirement? And then there's really not much. I mean, because our retirement in some cases is pretty substantial as a drill status guardsman. I mean, it's not nothing. But here's the thing, we need to remember that the new blended learning, or the new blended retirement system is going to fundamentally change what it means to have a career in our military. And if you're not educated on that, then I recommend, get with your leadership. If you are a part of leadership, get with your airmen and make sure that all of them understand the repercussions of these decisions about currently serving folks opting into the blended learning, the blended retirement, if you are in leadership and you don't understand what this thing will do to or could do and how it will negatively or positively, hopefully positively, affect our force, I suggest you get as educated as you can. So, but I would tell you that that idea of a 20-year retirement is going to change pretty substantially. So, good question, and thanks for that, because I do, that was something I wanted to talk about today, is the blended retirement. There's some great training modules out there. Get educated, and if you have questions, talk to your leadership, and that's really going to change the structure. We got to look at recruiting, all that stuff. So, okay, EGRs are reducing ranks so much in alert career fields that it's hard to get people to fill the billets. Does the ANG know, and can you fix it? Really what we're talking about is the enlisted grades review. As the Air National Guard Command Chief, I have a requirement. I have a requirement that every year I do an enlisted grades review. But understand, words matter, right? It's an enlisted grade review. It's not enlisted grades action. It's not enlisted grades reduction. It's the enlisted grades review. Really what that means is that it's my job once a year to look across our Air National Guard structure, our enlisted structure, and to make sure that we've got the right rank structure with respect to organizations. Now, in this last one, when Chief Hoteling, my predecessor, was in the position, he did something pretty unique, and I think it's how we should continue on. It was a fantastic direction that he took this enlisted grades review. And really what he did is he tied back to the discussion about our UTCs, because ultimately a UTC is how we organize to fight the war, and it's structured not by rank but by skill levels. And then there are associated skill levels, I mean, with rank and strata. But really what that did is that brought a rational discussion to how many chiefs should be in an organization, how many staff sergeants, how many tech sergeants, and what skill level they should be to be a UTC, for instance, in an F-16 squadron. But the question that was asked was really about our ACA sites, our alert control sites. And I will tell you, the job I had before I became the Air National Guard Command Chief was the 1st Air Force Command Chief, and that was something, those ACA sites were my responsibility, and this discussion came up all the time. But I would ask you to remember that when we talk about this, and I think I spoke a little bit about this the first hour, this is not a discussion about rank. This is a discussion about skill level and ability to perform the mission. I understand that it appears, or at least the narrative is, that we're losing airmen because the rank structure is not there. But I would tell you doesn't bear out in the data. Again, I live and die by data. I hear the discussion, and my personal opinion, really what it is that people are in a tech sergeant slot and they've been there for 10 years and they believe that they should get promoted to master. While I understand that, that's not the structure. The alert structure, the alert mission is very structured very deliberately. Because under the idea that we should have more rank, we could end up with all chiefs or all senior master sergeants in one chief, and no, so to speak, no Indians out there to do the work. So let's have the right discussion. I started a conversation down when I was at 1st Air Force, and the question really was, if we base the last enlisted grades review on a UTC, we ought to have that same discussion. But right now we don't have a UTC that's recognized across the components, recognized across the 1st Air Force community, recognized across the Air National Guard, and at ACC level. We don't have a UTC structure that can protect that organizational structure yet. Now, I think that's a great place to start, because what that'll do is that will build an organizational structure that we can fall out and we can resource appropriately. And then everybody knows when they take a job that this is the rank structure of the organization, and that's true of anywhere else we go. That's true of when you go into an aircraft maintenance or a finance shop or a safety or any of those. There's an organizational structure, and it's very deliberate. And I think we should build one of those within our ACA construct for a couple of reasons. And then this is off target, but when we deploy an ACA site, pretend maybe we send one up to Canada, which by the way we do, the question is, how many aircraft do we send? How many airmen? How many crew chiefs? Well, let's pull out the UTC as we do in a normal deployed situation, and you can't do that right now because one doesn't exist. We have one kind of, but it's not formalized. So I think that's the discussion as leadership we really need to have, is we need to start there and then kind of walk it back and then build the right structure and then put it into policy. So, okay, great question. Hey, we got one of our family readiness managers out there, Margaret Amos. Hey, thanks for being a part of this. Thanks for caring enough about our organization to continue to be supporting our families in your job. we could not do what we do without our family readiness folks, So Margaret, thanks for logging in and thanks for some questions, and I appreciate it. And the question really that she's asking is if we're going to place value on the Airmen and Family Readiness Center, why are they only one deep shops? That's a great question, and for me, it always comes down to manpower, and it comes down to when you've got a limited amount of resources, where do you put them? And we talked a little bit about this earlier, but the idea really is that the fact that we've got a full-time readiness person out there, family readiness, is pretty huge, because that is not tied to a UTC, as I just got done talking about. UTCs are how we fight the war. That is something that we corporately across the wings, we value so much that every wing has a position there. But Margaret, that's a great question, and the second part I would tell you about that is you're not alone. You're not alone because we've got our Director of Psychological Health. We've got our first sergeants that are really force multipliers for you in taking care of our families. We've got our HRAs who are out there helping us develop airmen and really think about diversity and inclusion and those kinds of things. And we've got our command chiefs and our supervisor. All of those folks are force multipliers for you. So I would tell you, Margaret, that it's not really an idea that we don't value that. I would tell you the opposite's true. We value it so much that we continue, even in a constrained budget environment, to continue to validate and to put money against something that we think is so important. I tend to be one of those people that believes that a demonstration of what you value is where you put your time and where you put your money. And money in particular, in a large sense of it, can be equated by manpower. Money and manpower are almost synonymous. So the fact that we continue to resource family readiness and the DPHs in particular and take those out of hide and they're not tied to a UTC are a really, really big deal. So thanks for what you do every day. But I would tell you there's more that we can do. We can give you more tools. We can give you more resources. We can give you more access. And I would ask you to continue to funnel those conversations up through your readiness, Family Readiness Center folks. And if we're not doing it right, you're not getting what you need to be successful, then let us know. At the end of the day, I can help change the focus of where we spend our money, but I need the feedback from you to help that happen. So thanks again for what you do. To all of our Family Readiness Center folks out there, you are an absolutely force multiplier for us. We couldn't do what we do. Our families and our airmen couldn't do what we do without you and your continued support, so thanks very much. Miss Connie, if you're by chance listening from DC, thank you. I appreciate it. Okay, Justin Jump. As a career airman, what is the ongoing scope and policy to ensure the right people are best utilized at the right time in the right place for the betterment of the force? It's a great question, Justin, and that's something we talk about all the time. There are really three priorities in our Air National Guard. The three priorities are readiness for today's fight, the 21st Century Guard Airmen, and the last one is building readiness for tomorrow and making sure that we've got the right airmen, the right resources, and the right tools and techniques to be ready for tomorrow's fight. But wrapped up to your question, in every single one of those is how do we continue to make sure that that conversation is the right airman with the right education and training, and that falls right in my lane, and that's a lot of what we're talking about. That's why I'm doing what we're doing today. I need to hear from you. I need to hear what's important, and if we can do better at developing our force, if we can do better about how we train, educate, then help me with that. I need your help. I think we're doing really well because I see the positive results of what you do every day, and you are absolutely amazing, and it blows me away, and I can't understand how we continue to do so very, very much and find balance in our lives. All of you find balance in your lives. But I think to your point, we can do a better job of taking care of you and giving you what you need. So just help us with that and use things like EFAC or your professional organizations to help funnel your ideas up to your leadership and tell them what you need. Part of what we talked about at the very beginning was this idea of innovation. I would tell you at the end of the day, the ideas for how to build a force that's ready for the challenges of tomorrow lies behind every one of you on this camera. It's not me, it's you. It's you, our airmen coming out of tech school and basic training today. The ones that are in basic training right now are going to help us solve these problems because the world's a complex place. North Korea, we don't know what's going to happen there tomorrow. The Russians, the Chinese, violent extremism. I mean, the world's a dangerous place. And I need every one of you to help us solve these complex problems because you're going to see the world differently. And I think it really goes to something that's important to me, and I'll take advantage of this opportunity to talk about it. we need to build a culture of innovation. We need to build a culture where airmen can make a mistake. We need to build a culture where an airman can fail but never be a failure. And starting that culture is the position that I'm in. It's our command chiefs, it's our supervisors to provide an opportunity for our airmen to continue to push up on boundaries and ask questions and force us in leadership to rethink the paradigm. So that's a do out for me personally and for all the command chiefs and all the chiefs and the supervisors that are listening. I need you to really think hard about developing an airman and about how we provide an airman's the left and right boundaries and kind of take those away and allow them to ask different questions. So something that's really, really obviously important to me. Okay, from messages, the Army's doing a study on allowing beards in uniform. Is the Air National Guard considering the same? I would tell you that's not an Army thing by itself, that's a DoD discussion. Really what we're talking about is how to get access to those folks to be in our military, Air Force, Army, Marine Corps, how to get access to those folks to do what I just talked about, how to change the structure of our Department of Defense to get to a place where we bring in everybody with great ideas. Is it beards? Maybe. Is it creating a cyber force where folks wear a different uniform and their PT standards are different? I don't know. But I would tell you it's all on the table. It's all on the table and it's all worth a discussion. We need to be willing to at least have the conversation. And I think in the past, maybe we haven't been so willing to have that discussion. I think it's time. Does it mean that we're going to change policy on wearing beards? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But we have to start at least asking the question about what does that get us if we do. I mean, you saw the change. I mean, it sounds simple to many of you, but for years and years and years, having tattoos, as a prior recruiter, tattoos came down to 25% of an exposed body part was the acceptable limit. If it was more than that, then you couldn't serve in the Air Force and the Air National Guard. That's all changed. And so that's the first step in being, okay, so if we change the rules, what does that get us? Does that get us more airmen? Does it make recruiting more? Do we get access to a subset of society that we don't get access to now that may help us fight the war differently? Maybe. Good question, though. I think it's all on the table. Again, from the messages, is there any consideration to allowing technicians to wear civilian clothes during the week? No. There's been no consideration, no discussion about it. The Air Force Reserve still does that for their technician force. We used to do that years ago, and then we went towards an all uniform. So there's some historical evidence there. I don't have enough information to know why we changed, why we went to all uniform. Again, I focus mainly on our military positions. I advocate for and I continue to make sure that our technician force is appropriately resourced and trained, but ultimately those kinds of discussions are really at the union level and at the technician level. I try to bring my focus up to the airman level, particularly related to your military position, not your full-time position. Again, sometimes my narrative, my discussion point is, I honestly, whether you're a drill status guardsman or an AGR or a technician is interesting, I'm concerned about how you are a part of the larger construct. So wearing uniforms or not as a technician is a good discussion, but I think that's something that you should certainly have at your local level and start there and see and do the homework on it and see if it's something that would change the structure for the better. If it's just an idea because you want to buy your own uniforms and you want to buy jeans and all that versus having them provided for you, okay, it's up to you. So I would just ask that maybe you have that conversation and then filter it up through your unions and through your leadership and see if it's something worth talking about. So, okay, good question though. Again, back to what I said, it's all on the table. You have to tell me what's worth talking about and what's worth really asking. That's part of my job, is to ask different questions. So. Okay, Melissa Morris, thanks for your question. Hopefully you're still online. With the current pilot shortage, is there any chance of the consideration of raising the age and doing waivers for current enlisted airmen that may be interested in becoming a pilot? Not right now. I haven't heard that discussion. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen. I do know that some of the rules are changing with some of our pilots. What they did is they're opening the aperture on the backside. So some of the pilots that have retired, the Secretary of the Air Force, I believe, don't quote me because I didn't read the whole email, or the whole thing on Facebook or wherever it went out, but they're interested in changing and offering the opportunity for some folks who retired to come back in, because we are in a really lull with our pilots, and there's a really the potential for it to be a catastrophe. I'll be honest with you. So I think the rules are changing, and it was a great question to ask. Maybe. Again, I think when the Air Force at large sees that as a potential fix or to help solve the problem, I think maybe they'll go there. It's just not something they've talked about yet. They've got some what I'll consider low-hanging fruit first to affect that. But again, I would tell you at some level, it's all on the table. So that's probably a good question to have. So good question, though. Thanks for that. Jay Rios, retired chief. Hey, chief, thanks for logging in, man. Thanks for still caring about what we do every day and continue to be a part of our Air National Guard family. So it's good to see some of our retired chiefs out there and retired folks logging in. That just is a demonstration of, I talk about our Air National Guard being family, and this just goes to the point that once you're part of our family, you never leave you there forever. So Jay, thanks. Chief, thanks for being a part of this. So Jay's question, what is the Air National Guard doing to assist wounded warriors when they return home? Well, that's a good question, and the answer is it depends. Really, the first and foremost, we're just trying to make sure that they're tied to the Wounded Warrior team out there. I went and spent some time out in San Antonio with the Wounded Warrior folks to make sure that there weren't any constraints or roadblocks or even speed bumps to getting the Wounded Warrior folks connected to our guardsmen. And when I talked to them, this was just a few months ago, Senior Master Sergeant Murph and I went down there and spent some time with them, and they were extremely excited about the connective tissue that we've built. We actually have somebody who's responsible for the Wounded Warriors who works in the Readiness Center. We've resourced a full-time civilian position. So that's that individual's job, to make sure that the connective tissue between our states and our wings runs through the Readiness Center and actually goes to the Wounded Warriors program for the Air Force to give access to those airmen, because you're an airman for life. So it's a good question. I would tell you if there are some challenges or dysfunctions, I'm not hearing about it. Maybe there may be some individual issues, and if they're at the wing level, then that's certainly something that we need to address again at the wing level. But I'm seeing nothing but goodness out of it. The Wounded Warrior folks are just doing amazing stuff for all of our airmen, regardless of their status. And I went and I had a chance to visit with some of those folks at the Wounded Warrior Games last year, and that was pretty cool to watch those folks really rising above any challenges that they have, and just truly enjoying the love of competition again is pretty amazing. I think it really touches anybody who gets to be out there to be a part of that. It's certainly changed my view of what it means to be an airman. So, great question though. Ryan Eisen, I think is how you say that. I hope I got that right, Ryan. Is the Air National Guard going to increase family resilience programs, frequency, strong bonds, yellow ribbon, marriage retreats example? Hey, that's a great question, and quite honestly, I had to ask for some data just because I didn't know what we were going to do in the upcoming years. So just a little bit of stats about yellow ribbon, and that's kind of the larger umbrella. For scope, in 2017, we spent about $22 million on yellow ribbon alone. That's a lot of money, and it went to 247 events. About 18,500 service members and their families took advantage of some of the yellow ribbon programs. And we bumped it up to 23 million in 2018, but as you know, right now we're under a continuing resolution. It looks like that's gonna go to about December 8th. That's when Congress has to get together and hopefully, again, put pressure on your professional organizations to put pressure on our congressional members. I'm hopeful, but I'm also a realist. I'm not confident that once December 8 hits that we're not going to go back into another 30-day continuing resolution. But as long as those kinds of CRs are in effect, it really limits our ability to grow any one of our programs. But again, I sat with some of our yellow ribbon folks at the Readiness Center, and I talked with them about the future of yellow ribbon and how we can better utilize the programs and better resource. In other words, if we have a limited pot of money, how do we make sure that goes into the right place? And I would tell you what, our yellow ribbon folks at the Readiness Center in particular are doing amazing things, trying to make sure that they're valuable for you and for your families. So if they're not working for you, talk to your yellow ribbon folks and talk to your Airman and Family Readiness folks and let us know what it is you need and how we can better manage that money. I don't think we're going to get much more money. We're going to get about 23 million. I think this is what the budget is for this year. But how we spend it, we have some ability to change how we spend that money, so help us with that. So good question though, man. Let's see, from the messages, can you provide an update on the Title 32 to Title 5 conversion? Yeah, absolutely. So for those of you who don't know that conversation, the question really is, the Title 32, or really the technician force, there's a, Congress has a law out there that came out a couple years ago, 2 years ago. The 1st of October of this year, we had to convert, or we have to convert 20% of our technician force to Title 5. And really what that means is we're disconnecting them. So right now a technician is considered a dual status technician. In other words, to have your military position, to have your civilian technician, you have to have your military position. Delinking them, taking it from a Title 32 technician to a Title 5, really what you're doing is you're creating a pure civilian position where somebody can be a pure civilian, you can grow a beard the whole 9 yards, don't have to wear your hair up, you don't have to wear the uniform, and you are delinked from your military position. So Congress said 20% has to convert, and we're in the process right now of working with your adjutant generals and your wing commanders in particular to figure out which 20% we're going to convert. Right now on Capitol Hill, there's a conversation, and they're still in conference over this. The House and the Senate have a different number. In other words, the law was 20%, but they've negotiated down a little bit, and the difference is somewhere around 10% to 12.4% instead of 20% of convert. We're not sure what it is. But the law says we have to convert, so we're in the process of converting right now, and our hope is that Congress comes out of conference and tells us, okay, this is it. Here's the real number, convert these. So I would encourage you to get educated. I would encourage you, because every wing is going to be different. Every wing has the ability to figure out how this is going to work. Now, the conversation really is this idea about what's the right kinds of positions to convert to a Title V or a purely civilian position. It doesn't mean you lose that drill status position, but you could literally have two people. You could have a Title V civilian during the week, and then on drill weekend, somebody comes in to do that job in uniform. They could be the same person, but they don't have to be under a Title V construct. So I would encourage you to work with your leadership to kind of figure out where you're at with that, again, because the wings have the ability to really maneuver. Brigadier General Nordhaus and his team at the Readiness Center are working with your command structure to make sure it's the right place. We need to have the right conversation, though, because is a crew chief on the line an appropriate person to turn into a pure civilian? We could have an argument about that. Is the person at an FSS that makes ID cards, is that a better place to turn to a Title V? Maybe, because you can have conversations about deployments and about training and those kinds of things. So we need to be very deliberate about which positions, and that's actually what's happening right now. So the moral of the story is a long way around to say the law is 20%, we're executing as we speak right now, but we're hoping that Congress is going to get together and give us what their quote unquote law or their real negotiated number is. Hoping that happens. I keep checking with our LL folks. Chief Sundin's our LL chief. He's takes care of me when it comes to legislative liaison stuff and or legislative stuff, and literally minute by minute he's sending me updates. So I'm hoping that answer comes out soon. So good question. Hey, we got one of our spouses online again. Thanks for our family members for being a part of this. Tamara Hagan, good question. Let's see. Number of problems with DTS pay, comm systems going down, and the question really is the Kentucky Air National Guard the only ones having these problems? Hey, Tamara, great question, and no, you're not. I could give you a dissertation on why we are where we are, but that's really not the question that you have. The question that you have is, I'm guessing, are you the only one having the problem, and is really are we addressing it? And the answer is we are absolutely addressing it, and no, you're not the only one. Lieutenant General Grosso at the Air Force level, she's the Air Force A1, so she's responsible for the programs and policies when it comes to manpower and all those kinds of things. Briefed AFCELC, again, the MAJCOM Command Chiefs, the Air Force Senior Enlisted Leader Council. She briefed us and the Chief Master on the Air Force that she is in the process right now of executing a new contract to build entirely new systems. Because right now what we've got is we've got multiple different systems with multiple different contracts that don't talk to each other. Well, that doesn't work in the best scenario. In the worst scenario, the black box in the middle that's supposed to communicate and translate doesn't work right because it's a third or fifth or eighth different contractor. So we want to get to a place where we figure out what are we trying to achieve first, and let's build the highway to get there, and then what we plug into the highway can be any kind of program because we built this highway to do what we needed to do. So she's got the money, she's executing to hopefully get a contract in place. The problem is that it's going to take a couple years to get into work. I see this as a good news. I see this as a good news story because what I had said earlier, we resource what we value. We put money against what we value, and we finally said this is worth the millions of dollars. and we're going to get better at it. I ask you to hang in there in the short term, and my promise to you and my hope is that in the short term it gets fixed, but my promise to you is that it will get better because we've got some great people working on this. And Lieutenant General Grosso and her team are incredibly talented folks really working to make it better, along with our A1 folks at the Air National Guard Readiness Center. General Hutchins Fry and her team out there is doing great work. So, are there any plans to allow Air National Guardsmen to apply for active duty, special duty tours, TIs, first sergeants, et cetera? Well, the answer is they're already out there. You already can apply to be a first sergeant. That ability is out there right now, and it's been out there for as long as I can remember. We don't get a lot of people applying, honestly. You know, the ad goes out, and I don't know if it's on the street right now, but the ad goes out and we get 1, 2, maybe apply a year. So first and foremost, I would tell you, we're not even filling the requirements or filling the opportunities that we have now. So if you're interested in doing that, you know, and you don't know how to get access to it, talk to your leadership. Log into the Air Force Air National Guard webpage. If you go into Google and put ANG full-time jobs, it'll bring up the page that the Readiness Center uses to fill those kinds of things. I encourage you to check it out. Log in. On the right-hand side, there's developmental positions that are short-term ADOS or MPA or even VLPAD, Voluntary Limited Active Duty period. You can apply for those kinds of opportunities that are outside of your wing. But part of what her question, or part of the question really was this idea that, let me look at it again. Yeah, it was actually from the messenger, so I don't know who sent it out. But the question was first sergeants, et cetera. And I think that's a great question to have is, why wouldn't we want an Air National Guard first sergeant to have the opportunity to be a first sergeant in an active duty wing? I think that's a great question to have, and we should be willing to have that conversation. And here's the good news. Chief Master Sergeant Air Force, Chief Wright, absolutely wants to have that conversation today. He's willing to execute today on those kinds of things. But again, it goes back to what I said when we started having the conversation about Air War College and Air National Guardsmen doing that kind of thing at Air War College. The question is why, and then are we sure we've got the right developed airmen to take care of our force? Let me give you a quick personal story. So last year, over New Year's, General Rice and I, along with some folks, we went to visit our folks deployed. We went to Al Jaber, Ayudid, and to Ali Salim. And while I was at one of those bases, I was sitting one evening with the wing command chief at Ali Salim. And I've happened to know this chief for a long time. He and I just knew each other. His name's Scott Loescher. So Chief Loescher and I were talking, and he leaned over and he said, hey man, really cool news. Every first sergeant on Ali Salim right now is a guardsman. That's pretty huge. In a deployed location, every one of them was from our Air National Guard. But we quickly realized after a discussion that we didn't do a very good job of preparing our Air National Guard first sergeants to be deployed first sergeants. Because taking care of an airman is more than taking care of a drill status guardsman or a technician or an AGR at the state. It means taking care of an airman in everywhere. But we don't do a very good job. Matter of fact, we don't train our first sergeants in the Air National Guard to deal with the UCMJ. So we have an active duty commander with an Air National Guard first sergeant. An airman does something, they violate General Order Number 1, they're drinking, or they do something they shouldn't have done, and the commander turns to the first sergeant and says, okay, first sergeant, should we UCMJ Article 15, LOR, what should we do? And now you've got an Air National Guard first sergeant that goes, let me read the book. Our expectation, and those commanders' expectation, is those first sergeants are a part of the leadership team and they understand what taking care of an airman means. And that same thing applies for our active duty folks. Those active duty first sergeants don't have a depth of knowledge to be able to take care of our guard airmen downrange, like just in the same token that we can't take care of an active duty because we just don't understand each other well enough yet. So we're working pretty hard to bridge those gaps. But I would tell you, before we start spinning people back and forth between particularly first sergeants, let's make sure that we're training our first sergeants to be effective leaders of airmen and useful tools for our commanders, regardless of component. And I will tell you, with Danny Doucette, Chief Doucette's the first sergeant commandant, or the commandant at the First Sergeant Academy, he's really helping us do that kind of stuff. We're changing the way we train airmen at the First Sergeant Academy. And I think those folks that are coming out of there today are the right first sergeants to be able to take advantage of these opportunities. So back to the original question was, can we begin to do some more of this? Absolutely, I think the gloves are off. Chief Wright is all about this idea of this total force. Let's get rid of the words and let's just call it the Air Force, because airmen should be allowed to serve and able to serve, and we should leverage the experience that all of us have coming from our different components to be able to make it better every day. So good question. Hey, Chief Wilson, thanks for your shout out. Looks like the question is, do I have aim points? Aim points were Chief Hoteling's messaging way. That's really what his target was for consistent messaging out to the field. It's just not how I communicate. I love the aim points. It was something that I used down at 1st Air Force to put on tables and those kinds of things, because really it was those talking points or those priorities for the Air National Guard Command Chief. And it's just something I chose not to do. I tend to look at the world a little differently. My priorities are really our priorities. Lieutenant General Rice and I have 3 priorities, and they're consistent, and they're not going to change. They're going to continue to evolve every year, but they're not going to change. So I don't think aim points really work for me. I send out every drill. I send out a 1-page talking point. It's really just some things that I'm thinking about, and they're really the command chief focus areas is really what they are. Same concept, but not aim points. But good question, and thanks for that, because I do get that often. Hey, do you have aim points? And that kind of just really goes to the ability that Chief Hoteling leveraged those aim points to communicate to airmen. I think that was a great tool. It's just something that doesn't kind of fit into the way I talk and communicate. So anyway. Okay, Shawn, I think is your last name. Shayna Shawn, there we go. Hey Shayna, thanks for your question. Being that we are required to be fit to fight, and many DSGs do not live in the vicinity of base gyms, question is, has the Air National Guard thought about working with corporate gyms to waive membership fees or offer price reductions? We haven't corporately, but I will tell you, there are wings out there, there are squadrons and folks out there who have done that, developed relationships with the local gyms. And in many cases, wing commanders and wing command chiefs have said, hey, we think that this is so important, and that they've actually took training rooms and other rooms within their organizations and put money and resources against it and built gyms. The Army National Guard in particular, and there's a program that's coming out of Kansas, and I think West Virginia is leveraging it well, and it's essentially a boot camp, and they're more focused on when folks are struggling with PT, but they put them through a boot camp, they put them on orders. They think it's so valuable that they put these folks on orders, and they put a guardsman in there to help train them to get them physically fit. Because really what we're talking about is not passing a PT test. We're talking about a cultural change. We're really talking about changing somebody's life so that they live longer, healthier lives. And yes, it'll benefit the Air National Guard and the Air Force, but really it's about helping change the culture of our airmen, and sometimes that's more than just taking a test every year. So there are some organizations out there that are executing resources, and you have that ability. Your wing commanders and your wing command chiefs have that ability today to execute those resources. We're trying to give flexibility to your leadership teams to do whatever they need to do to make sure that your airmen are fit and they are ready for today's fight. Again, I would tell you, if this is something of value, bring it up at your local Airman Council and tell your leadership that this is what you need to be successful. Your wing commanders and your wing command chiefs have the ability to execute resources to do those kinds of things, and there are some wings that are out there doing it right now. But I think that's a great question. You have those kinds of abilities to do a lot of things that I think we don't take advantage of, so give it a shot. I look for those kinds of ideas from all of you, and if you're able to figure out how to make that work, then send that back up to us. Use Facebook here, send it through your EFAC, and tell us the good news story, and tell us how you did it, because if you figured out how to make it work better for a wing, somebody else is going to need to steal that idea. I mean, we should be, that should be across our force with those good ideas. And that was one of the questions that came up about, I remember reading it, was about Airmen and Family Readiness programs, and are there some best practices out there? And I can't remember who sent that one, but that's another one of those ideas, that there are so many great ideas that out there that are happening at your wing, that are happening at your squadrons, and we tend not to talk about them. We don't share them, and we need to do them. And that's really where this innovation idea came from, this spark tank thing that the Chief of Staff of the Air Force and Secretary of the Air Force really came up with. Is we know good ideas exist. We know that there are best practices. We know airmen out there are innovating in ways that we can only imagine, but we don't hear about them enough. And it's a shame when somebody comes up with one of these best practices and they hoard it. And it's not because you're trying to, it's just because you've got a million things going on, and I get that. So we need to communicate better. We need to share those kinds of ideas. So if you've got them, share them, and let's get them out there for the rest of the folks to benefit. Because I guarantee you, one of you out there in one of your wings has the ability, and you've come up with a program that changes lives, and help us, tell us. So, okay, James Jones, when is the Air National Guard going to separate the waist measurement from the PT test? Height and weight, waist are not, height and weight and waist are not a good measurement of fitness. That's a great personal opinion. I appreciate your input. But I would tell you that the folks who spend their entire lives, who have doctorates and PhDs and those kinds of tests would tell you otherwise, that there is a ratio when it comes to height and waist plus push-ups and sit-ups that have an equation to determining your overall fitness level. If you have differing in matrix and you have a different opinion, I certainly suggest that you socialize that. But the Air Force spent a lot of money coming up with this test that it's really just an evaluation. I think that to a large extent we treat it as a test that you could study for at the last minute. It's not really that. It's about changing who you are and really changing what's important to you in your life and having a life based in fitness and good eating habits and those kinds of things are really what we're after. Because let's be honest about what a fitness test really is, regardless whether it's a waist or how many jumping jacks you can do, but let's be honest about really what this is. Being physically fit is not a fitness test. As the as the Sergeant Major of the Army, Sergeant Major Daly said, I was sitting in a board with him, we were talking to some folks. One of the things that he brought up is this idea of fitness is really to prepare you for your worst day. And your worst day has not happened yet. Imagine if you're a services troop and pick a wing at the 134th, for instance, and you're a services troop and we deploy you to Korea, and you're where I was when I was in Korea at Camp Red Cloud, which is 20 clicks from the DMZ. And the North Koreans decide enough is enough and they start launching conventional artillery. If that happens, there's enough conventional artillery in North Korea to kill millions of people. My hope is that you're physically fit enough to carry what we need you to do to perform your mission. To get in that Humvee, to drive the top of the hill, to if you're a comm troop, to set up radar bounce so the JTACs can do their job. We hope if you're a services troop that you're physically fit enough that as part of your job as a mortuary affairs person is to be able to take care of our fallen airmen, our fallen soldiers, Marines, and sailors. So this really isn't about can you pass a PT test. This is about being functionally fit to do your job in the worst day of your entire life. And it hadn't happened yet. Could it happen tomorrow? I talked about that earlier. The world's a very dangerous place. So let's put things into perspective and talk about what are we talking about? We're really talking about being prepared. We're talking about that number one priority, which is being ready to fight today. And I think that's a different discussion than disliking the PIT fitness test or the way it's handled or the way it's measured. We can always do better at that, but this is not that. This is about being ready to fight the fight when the nation calls you. So, good question though, thanks for that. Bill McManus, has there been any more discussion in regards to the reduction in age for Tricare benefits to coincide with the reduction in age for the pension for folks that get credit for contingency orders? No. Not heard this discussion. It may be happening and I just haven't heard it. It's a great question to have. I think that's probably something I need to do some homework on. So Bill, I would encourage you to have this conversation and really help me understand what it is we're talking about. And that's something that, maybe if there's an access to Tricare that's different, and what I guess you're asking is if you've deployed multiple times and you can now retire at 50-something instead of 60, that Tricare doesn't kick in at the same rate or at the same time. That's a conversation I wasn't aware of and I didn't know that wasn't happening, so I need to know more about that. So get with your leadership team, get with your wing command chief and help them understand really what the question is because that will get to me through EFAC. And then what I will do is I will ask them to do the homework. They get into the law, they get into the policy, they help inform me on really what we're talking about here is understanding the challenge first, and then that'll help us understand where we have ways to attack it. So good question. That's something I hadn't heard before. So thanks very much for that, man. Good. Okay. So looks like this is going to be, we're about 10 till. Last question. So Margaret Amos, I think we had a question from her earlier. She must have got in early and put some stuff on Facebook. So Margaret, thanks very much for Karen, and like I said earlier, taking time to put some feedback in here. So Margaret, good question. Air Force core values, they seem to be lacking. How do you instill that they are valued and demonstrated? Well, we tell you, the core values are something that we talk about day one. We talk about day one in basic training. We talk about it through tech school. Our core values are that thing, that shared experience, the thing we value as airmen. And I'm not talking guard, reserve, or active duty. I think that's what makes us uniquely airmen, is those things that we say are important to us, those basic core values that are non-negotiable. If there's a perception out there that they are negotiable, that people aren't holding themselves accountable to them, that's disappointing. It's not been my experience, because when I go visit airmen, when I get out and I see nothing but absolutely, truly dedicated airmen who are absolutely want to do their jobs. They want more time to do their jobs. They want time to focus on what we've asked them to do. They love being airmen. They love serving in this thing we call the Air National Guard. They love being a part of this family. So if there are some folks out there who are struggling with the idea of what the core values mean to them, then it's up to all of us to help them understand. I talked earlier about something as simple as the enlisted evaluation system, but this idea of feedback and letting people know expectations continues. It starts in basic training, but it continues our entire lives, and we need to hold each other accountable. If there are folks that are not living up to the core values, then quite honestly, Margaret, we need to hold them accountable. I just talked earlier today, I'm sorry, it was yesterday, I talked to some folks who were going through ALS right here at McGee-Tyson, and we talked about this idea of what is leadership, and one of the things I said to them is, if you're looking up the chain for leadership, you might want to reconsider. Because every one of us, regardless of whether you're an Airman First Class or the Air National Guard Command Chief, has an opportunity to lead every day. You have an opportunity to lead yourself. You have an opportunity to lead that brand new airman. You have an opportunity to lead somebody standing to the left of you and right to you. And leadership is sometimes holding each other accountable to the standards and being willing to stand up and say, that's not how we do business. That's unacceptable in our Air Force and our Air National Guard. If you want to be a part of my family, don't do that. I think we need to do a better job of that in general. You know, I get often asked, you know, what are those things that I think about? What's important to me? I will tell you, as I said earlier, this Air National Guard thing, this National Guard thing, it's family to me. It's personal. Every single one of you who is logged in right now, who has been a part of this discussion, every one of you that has chosen to put your hand up and say, I support, defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That's an honorable thing. And I appreciate you being a part of my family. If you're one of those folks that helps us, whether you're an Airman and Family Readiness, you're our support mechanism, you're those people that we depend on every day, you are absolutely a part of this family too. We depend on you to make sure that we're taken care of, that we have what we need to be successful. You enable us to do our jobs. I get concerned that we consider this family business. My son's a guardsman in the Maryland Guard. My daughter, grandson, they're all a part of this family. My wife, Amy, this is family for all of us. But I get concerned when I hear stories about people aren't living up to the core values, or we talk about sexual assault, people hurting each other, hurting themselves, and I need help from all of you. I need help from all of you. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Remember that person to the left and to the right of you, whether they're in uniform or not, depend on you every day. I depend on you. Don't let me down. Don't let each other down. Don't let yourself down. Hey, so thanks for your time today. Before I get out of here, there's some folks that I want to thank. You know, the incredible staff out here in McGee-Tyson, I can't tell you how much I appreciate what they bring to the fight every day. This incredible facility that they have here, they're dedicated folks in McGee-Tyson and the TEC staff to developing airmen in so many ways. I appreciate everything you do every day. And thanks for the team that's here. I have civilians that came in on their off time to be here on drill weekend with all of you with me. So thanks for that. And I've got a list of folks that I want to personally thank, and I wrote them down because I didn't want to forget anybody. You know, we got Tech Sergeant Eric Gallion. He's behind the camera over there. Thanks for that. Hey, Master Sergeant Jerry Harlan. He and I were down at 1st Air Force. He is here running the PA team. So Jerry, thanks for being here. Mr. Jerry Barnes and Mr. Ron Waite. Hey, guys, thanks for being here. Thanks for being a part of this. Truly a testament to your dedication to what we do to develop airmen. So thanks for you guys for being here. Sean Withers, Senior Master Sergeant Sean Withers, got his team back there. Sean, thanks for that. It's good to see you again, brother. Thanks for our time tonight. Jessica Walters, she's one of our PA folks that I rely on every day from Air National Guard Readiness Center. She's probably going to be mad at me, maybe bringing her up, but she's in the back room back there. Jess, you make the rest of this look easy. I appreciate what you do every day, and I appreciate you helping me to see that there are different ways to communicate. So thanks, Jess. And where's Shalonda Roberts? I know she's back there. Hopefully next time I see her, she'll have master on. So thanks for what you do every day. I appreciate it. Thanks to every single one of us. I've got Sergeant Q back here behind camera, and certainly Senior Master Sergeant Carrie Villarreal, my exec, who's with me here today. Any success I have on the road or visiting airmen or talking is truly because she makes it happen for me and helps me stay straight. So. Hey, so again, I would ask that right here below, there's going to be a link, and I think it's scrolling across right now, the Survey Monkey. Thanks for being here, but I would ask that you continue to provide feedback. Let us know if this worked for you. If we need to do better, maybe some of the questions, let us know. Let us know whether it worked, how it can be better, whether you enjoyed it or not. I'm always looking for feedback because I think we can always do better than yesterday. So I think while I personally took a lot away, I know the staff's got a lot of work to do. See, the good part about it is I get to ask all these questions and then ask the staff to help me understand better. So we'll come up with a way to feed some of these questions that I couldn't answer back to you. But the last thing I want to say, honestly, is just, again, thanks for being a part of this family. Thanks for choosing to be a part of this, the less than 1% that serve in uniform. It means a lot to me. Thanks for what you do. Take care of yourselves and take care of each other. I appreciate your time more than you know.